Hey everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. So you may have heard that there is a new film by director Steve McQueen out called Widows. Steve McQueen, the fantastic director of Hunger, Shame and 12 Years a Slave, began his career as an artist, won the Turner Prize and then has become one of the most astonishing film directors of the modern age, and there hasn't been a drop stitch in his career up until now. And I'm delighted to report that Widows doesn't let the side down either. Really interesting fusion of heist movie and character drama. And as Steve McQueen himself has been saying in pre-release interviews, that on the one level this movie embraces the classic conventions of a heist movie. If you think of something like Ocean's 11, albeit this is much grittier, whilst also subverting that as well. This is a very common Steve McQueen conceit. He'll take something that seems outwardly familiar, and then he's really good at lacing narratives of his films with real surprises that you don't see coming, both emotional and narrative surprises, in a way that doesn't feel contrived, but feels absolutely earned. So it's co-written by McQueen and Gillian Flynn, who is the author of Gone Girl, which she then adapted into a screenplay for the David Fincher film in 2014. Taking as its basis the 1980s BBC series of the same name, Widows, by author Linda DePlant, who went on to do the likes of Prime Suspect. And this is something that it seems quite unusual for a director like McQueen to come out and express such affection for this TV series. But he says he has. He says he's always harboured a long-standing love of the series, and what he's now done is he's taken the broad idea, which is several bereaved women who take up the criminal mantle of their deceased husbands. But he's added some real contemporary nuance and grit to it. For starters, the action has been moved from Liverpool over to Chicago. And what that does is it has a transformative effect on the character of the storyline straight away. It's one of the things this film does very well is it looks at a particularly American kind of power structure. This is very relevant in the modern age, and it assumes this is one of the main reasons why McQueen wants to do it. Right from the sort of rich in their sort of alderman sort of houses and mansions, right the way down, going underneath the L train into sort of rain-soaked warehouses and alleyways. The movie encompasses a whole social strata in a way that is really interesting, and is one of the many ways in which this is not just a heist movie. There is so much more going on in this. There is so much grafted onto the conceit of the heist movie. So centrally you have Viola Davis, who has lost her husband, played by Liam Neeson, who stole a great deal of money from a local crook played by Brian Tyree Henry, who now wants to make inroads into becoming a politician. He kind of wants to make a name for himself. He craves what the slick Politico played by Colin Farrell wants, which is sort of wealth, power, influence. And of course, because Colin Farrell's character is white, he doesn't necessarily seem to have had to have fought very hard for it. Colin Farrell's father is Robert Duvall, who is this aging, creepy, like racist, like nasty character who is desperate for his family to hold on to power at all costs. All of this is sort of swirling around. The movie does a brilliant job of balancing all of its disparate character arcs really well. Into that then comes the Viola Davis character, and she is threatened and basically said, look, if this money is not returned, you will die. She then discovers her husband's notebook detailing the plans of his latest robbery, and she goes and contacts the other widows who also lost their husbands in the same job and says, look, we've got to get together and work on this because I'm the only one standing between you and a bullet in your head. And a very tentative and not altogether unsuspicious bond is formed between Viola Davis, Elizabeth Debicki and Michelle Rodriguez. And into that later comes Cynthia Erivo, who isn't one of the widowed characters, but she becomes the driver and she becomes another important component in this machine. And it's based a very interesting story about how at the start of the movie these women are defined by the presence of their husbands, and also after their husbands die, how they're defined by the absence of their husbands. Well, it's a very interesting comment on gender politics and gender relations, and it is in keeping with McQueen's other movies like 12 Years a Slave. Although this is a genre piece, it is a heist movie. It builds towards the heist that you know is coming. It borrows themes and motifs from McQueen's other films, particularly the idea that that people become inured to a certain kind of circumstance, and then all of a sudden that facade will be stripped away. And what I mean by that is, if you think for example, in 12 Years a Slave, in which there's that extraordinary performance from Chiwetel Ejiofor as Solomon Northup, who is a free man living in New York, who then has that freedom stripped away from him. He has his identity stripped away from him, and basically the whole nature of his own particular reality then comes crashing down. And similarly, go back to Shame with the brilliant performance by Michael Fassbender, in which he plays a sex addict whose life is very, very regimented, whose life is built around his addiction. Then into that comes the rogue element. Carey Mulligan is a sister who basically causes Michael Fassbender's life to basically implode. Similarly, in this, you have Viola Davis, who says she wasn't aware of her husband's criminal activities, although clearly she's benefited from his material wealth. She lives in a very, very nice apartment, and she claims not to have known what it is that her husband does. And then Brian Therese Henry then barges his way into her apartment and goes, how can you not know what your husband was doing? Look where you're living compared to a lot of the poverty on display in the rest of the wards in Chicago. And all of this sort of social, racial, identity, gender, class struggle is going on. And what the really impressive thing that Flynn and McQueen have done is, it doesn't feel contrived. It doesn't feel like the movie is proceeding as a heist movie, then stopping to give us an important moral lesson. All of this, the genre thrills that you expect, fuse very, very well with the socio-political insight in a way which is really, really smooth, and is entirely a credit to the screenplay and also McQueen's typically assured direction, which has got that lovely, lustrous, nighttime, almost shimmering cinematography from Sean Bobbitt, with whom he's worked before, including on 12 Years a Slave. You have a very propulsive score from Hans Zimmer that remains very quiet in the first half, but then gradually gathers this kind of driving momentum as it goes on. The performances are absolutely superb across the board. I mean, it hardly needs to be said that Viola Davis is superb, but she is one of many, many really great performances in this. I mean, I have to say, I thought it was brilliant to see Michelle Rodriguez in this, because Michelle Rodriguez is so often cast as the sort of no-nonsense action type in the likes of Fast and Furious and Avatar. How great to actually see her working with a really rounded character in this. And indeed, if you've seen interviews with Michelle Rodriguez, you can tell how fired up she is to be working with such a great director and a great cast and a great script. Cynthia Erivo is a real breakout. She was also in Bad Times at the El Royale recently. She is superb. Every character gets their own little place, and all of the character arcs feel very well thought through, and they don't feel token or arbitrary. Everything is rounded off. Every character has a reason for behaving like the way they're behaving. I should also, one person I haven't mentioned is Daniel Kaluuya, who plays Brian Tyree Henry's on-the-screen brother, who is incredibly, he's got this kind of like sort of sloping kind of walk, and it's incredibly sinister. And Daniel Kaluuya is just a fantastic actor, and he's so charismatic. Even when he's playing a really creepy, nasty character in this, he's so watchable, and he's going to go on, I know, to continue to do such brilliant work. It's a really, really impressive film. I kind of thought that my top 10 of the year list was pretty much locked down by now. I will do another vlog on that. This has complete come along and has actually caused some disruption, because this is such a good film, and I feel I'm going to have to find a space for it now. It cements Steve McQueen as one of our great modern filmmakers. So it's called Widows. I highly advise you go and see it, and drop me a comment here at Kubrick Corner with your thoughts on the film, and I'll see you soon. Bye.